Imagine it, just after dawn, the world is still, not peaceful, not serene, but still, in the way only absolute absence can make it. One moment, cities pulse with life. Traffic flows, lights flicker on in high rises, coffee machines hiss in corner cafes, children laugh on schoolyards. The next, nothing. Not a crash, not a bang, just an instant, global vanishing. Every human being gone, not dead, not buried, simply absent. In New York, a subway train glides to a halt mid-tunnel, its automated system sensing no signal ahead. In Tokyo, vending machines blink their LED displays into empty streets. In Nairobi, a half-parked motorcycle tips slowly onto hot asphalt. No hand catches it. The silence doesn't arrive all at once. It creeps in. First, the absence of voices, then engines, then the subtle, constant background noise we never notice, the whir of refrigerators, the buzz of streetlights, the distant drone of aircraft. Within minutes, the sky clears of contrails. Within hours, the air begins to soften, as if breathing for the first time in centuries. Birds pause. Dogs bark into voids. A house cat sits by a window, waiting for a hand that will never return. This isn't the end of the world. The planet doesn't shudder or crack open. Earth continues, calmly and differently, as it has for 4.5 billion years. But for the first time in millennia, it does so without us. And in that silence, something profound begins. Not destruction, but unraveling. Not chaos, but quiet reclamation. Within the first hour, the systems we rely on begin to falter. Not with drama, but with quiet inevitability. Electricity grids, designed for constant human oversight, start to fail. In power plants, turbines spin unattended. Control rooms sit empty. Without operators to balance supply and demand, regional grids overload and shut down, first in one city, then another, cascading across continents like falling dominoes. Within 24 hours, nearly all of the world's electrical infrastructure goes dark. Water systems follow. Pumps that push clean water through millions of miles of pipe require electricity. Without it, pressure drops. Within a day, taps run dry in high-rise apartments. Sewage treatment plants, no longer aerating or processing waste, begin to overflow. Gravity takes over. Raw sewage backs up into streets, basements, subway tunnels. The stench is immediate, but there's no one left to notice. Transportation grinds to a halt. Planes in the air? Most are already grounded by automated protocols when communication fails. Those still aloft glide until fuel runs out, then vanish into oceans or remote terrain. On the ground, traffic lights blink erratically before going dark. Cars stall at intersections, some idling until their tanks empty. Trains coast to stops or derail where switches were left misaligned. Ships drift, engines off, guided only by currents and wind. Cities, once roaring organisms of steel and glass, become tombs of idle machinery. Refrigerators warm, security systems deactivate, elevators freeze between floors. Pets wander, confused. Zoo animals press against bars, waiting for keepers who never come. Yet nature doesn't wait. Rain falls on empty streets. Wind rattles loose signs. Rats emerge from sewers, bolder now. Pigeons land on silent buses. The collapse isn't violent. It's mechanical, systemic, predictable. And it happens not because the world ends, but because humans are no longer there to hold it together. One small act of maintenance at a time. A year has passed. The silence is no longer new. It's settled, like dust on abandoned furniture. And in that quiet, life returns. Not with fanfare, but with persistence. In cities, weeds punch through sidewalk cracks. Dandelions, plantain, and clover, species long suppressed by concrete and herbicides, spread across vacant lots and parking garages. Rainwater pools and potholes, becoming miniature wetlands where mosquitoes breed and frogs appear, carried by wind or birds from nearby parks. Trees, once pruned and contained, stretch limbs over fences and sidewalks. Saplings sprout in gutters, nourished by wind-blown soil and decaying leaves. Inside homes, the absence of climate control takes its toll. Humidity warps floorboards. Mold blooms on wallpaper, feeding on organic glue and paper. Insects move in, silverfish in bathrooms, termites in damp wood. Without human intervention, even the most modern building becomes an ecosystem. Roofs leak, windows crack under thermal stress, and where water enters, decay follows. Wildlife adapts quickly. Coyotes trot down suburban streets in broad daylight. Deer graze in overgrown backyards. Raccoons, ever resourceful, pry open unsecured trash bins and nest in attics. In Europe, wild boar root through gardens in Berlin and Barcelona. In India, langur monkeys reclaim temple courtyards once crowded with tourists. Farms tell a different story. Without plowing, planting, or pesticides, fields revert to meadow within months. Wheat and corn are outcompeted by native grasses and perennials. Domesticated animals fare poorly. Cows, unable to break free from milking stalls, starve. Chickens, exposed without coops, fall prey to foxes and hawks. But feral dogs form packs, and cats, descendants of house pets, become efficient hunters, blending into the new wild. The planet doesn't mourn us. It simply resumes what it was doing before we arrived, cycling nutrients, shifting soils, growing, dying, renewing. Human spaces, once rigid and controlled, soften at the edges. Nature doesn't conquer. They infiltrate patiently, molecule by molecule, and already the first layer of our civilization begins to blur, not erased, but woven into something older, quieter, and far more enduring. A decade has passed. The world is greener, wetter, wilder, and our structures, once symbols of permanence, are yielding to time. Wooden houses, especially in humid climates, have largely collapsed. Roofs sag under the weight of moss and accumulated debris. Termites and fungi have consumed support beams. In drier regions like the American Southwest, adobe and timber homes endure longer, but even they crack under relentless sun and seasonal rains. Paint peels, siding warps, windows, once sealed tight, now shatter from temperature swings or falling branches. Concrete and steel fare better, but not forever. Without maintenance, rebar inside concrete begins to rust. As it expands, it fractures the surrounding material, a process called spalling. Bridges show hairline cracks that widen with each freeze-thaw cycle. Overpasses, once engineered for decades of use, now groan on their own weight. Some collapse quietly in the night, sending plumes of dust into moonlit air. Subways flood completely. Without pumps, groundwater rises unchecked, filling tunnels with stagnant water that breeds algae and anaerobic bacteria. Rails corrode. Stations become subterranean caves, echoing only with dripping water and the occasional splash of a swimming rat. Roads, once smooth ribbons of asphalt, buckle under root pressure. Tree saplings, planted by birds or wind, grow through center lines, their roots prying apart pavement like slow-motion wedges. In cities, streets disappear beneath layers of leaf litter and soil, turning into forest paths. Traffic signs lean at odd angles, their messages faded beyond recognition. Plastics persist, bags snagged in branches, bottles half buried in riverbanks. But even they begin to fragment under UV light, breaking into microplastics that sink into sediment. Metals oxidize. Copper pipes turn green. Iron gates crumble into rust. Aluminum siding dulls to a chalky gray. Yet amid this decay, life thrives. Ivy blankets office towers. Bees nest in hollow door frames. Owls roost in elevator shafts. A shopping mall's skylight shatters, allowing sunlight to pour onto a floor now carpeted in ferns and wildflowers. Humanity built to last, but not without care. And care, it turns out, was the invisible mortar holding everything together. A century has passed. The cities we knew are no longer cities, not in any functional sense. They are forests, wetlands, and meadows draped over the bones of human ambition. Skyscrapers, once monuments to verticality, have begun their slow surrender. Steel frames, exposed to rain and oxygen, corrode from the joints outward. Without climate control or repairs, glass facades shatter, first from storms, then from the relentless expansion of ice in winter cracks. By year 100, many high-rises have partially collapsed, their upper floors pancaked onto lower ones, entombed in vines and moss. In coastal cities like Miami or Mumbai, saltwater intrusion has accelerated decay. Foundations erode, and towers tilt like ancient obelisks. Concrete structures fare better, but not indefinitely. Parking garages, stadiums, and highway overpasses remain as ghostly shells, their surfaces pocked with holes where rebar has rusted away. Yet even these are being softened by lichen that secretes acids, by tree roots that widen fissures, by rain that carries silt into every crevice. Nature doesn't bulldoze our ruins, it absorbs them. Rivers, long confined by levees and culverts, breach their banks and reclaim floodplains. Former suburbs become oak savannas or pine woodlands, depending on climate. In temperate zones, forests return with astonishing speed. Within decades, a field becomes a thicket. Within a century, it's a closed canopy. Satellite images would show urban grids vanishing beneath green canopies, roads reduced to faint scars in the earth. What remains is not uniform. Stone buildings, like those made of granite or limestone, endure far longer. The U.S. Capitol, the Parthenon, medieval cathedrals, these may still stand, though roofless and ivy-clad. Bronze statues tarnish but persist. Marble slowly dissolves in acid rain, yet outlasts steel by centuries. Animals now move freely through what were once dense human zones. Wolves roam the outskirts of Paris. Elephants wander abandoned villages in Southeast Asia. Beavers dam culverts, creating new wetlands in former industrial parks. The distinction between city and wilderness blurs entirely. There are no more streetlights, no sirens, no schedules, only seasons, cycles, and the quiet work of roots and rain. Humanity's footprint hasn't vanished, but it has been folded into the landscape, like an old letter buried in soil, its ink fading, but its shape still faintly traceable. A millennium has passed. The earth has turned 1,000 times around the sun since the last human voice was heard. Most of what we built has returned to dust, but not all. Concrete, once poured in staggering quantities, now exists only as scattered rubble. Roads are gone, erased by erosion and plant growth. Even the deepest foundations have been fractured by frost, roots, and time. Steel structures, bridges, towers, ships have long since oxidized into rust and crumbled. Plastics, though persistent, have fragmented into microscopic particles, buried in sediment or washed into ocean trenches, yet certain materials endure. Stone lasts. Granite headstones, marble monuments, and limestone temples may still stand, though weathered and lichen-covered. The pyramids of Giza, built to outlast empires, remain, though their sharp edges have softened and sand has reclaimed their bases. Similarly, Mount Rushmore's carved faces persist, though cracked by freeze-thaw cycles and stained by mineral deposits. Deep underground, some traces linger longer. In dry, stable environments like New Mexico's waste isolation pilot plant or Finland's Onkalo nuclear repository, sealed containers of radioactive waste may survive intact for tens of thousands of years. These are humanity's most durable artifacts, not because they were meant to be beautiful, but because they had to be safe. Satellites, too, tell a story. Low-orbit satellites have long since burned up in the atmosphere, but those in higher orbits, like the Hubble Space Telescope or certain GPS satellites, may continue circling Earth for millennia, silent witnesses to a planet that no longer looks up. On the surface, the clearest evidence of our existence lies not in buildings, but in geology. Layers of concrete dust, plastic residues, and radionuclides form a distinct stratum in sediment, what scientists call the Anthropocene layer. Future geologists, if any arise, would find this thin band and know something unprecedented happened here. But cities, gone. Airports, swallowed by forest. Dams, breached by rivers reclaiming their courses. Even landfills, once mountains of refuse, have settled into mounds of compacted soil, their contents slowly neutralized by microbial action. What remains is subtle, a bronze plaque half buried in loam, a ceramic shard in a riverbank, the ghostly outline of a foundation under centuries of leaf litter. Not monuments to glory, but whispers in stone and metal, slowly fading into the Earth's memory. With humanity gone, the planet begins to heal, not with haste, but with the steady rhythm of natural systems long suppressed. Air quality improves almost immediately. Within weeks, smog lifts from cities like Los Angeles, Delhi, and Beijing. Nitrogen dioxide and sulfur emissions, once choking skies and acidifying rain, vanish. Within a year, the atmosphere clears enough that stars become visible again over urban centers. Carbon dioxide levels, however, decline more slowly. Though fossil fuel combustion stops instantly, CO2 lingers for centuries. Still, without new emissions, forests and oceans gradually reabsorb it. By the end of the first century, atmospheric CO2 drops measurably, though not to pre-industrial levels. Oceans recover more dramatically. Fishing fleets sit idle, their nets rotting on docks. Marine populations, depleted for decades, begin to rebound. Cod off Newfoundland, tuna in the Pacific, sardines along the coasts, all surge as ecosystems rebalance. Coral reefs, no longer stressed by warming and pollution simultaneously, show resilience in some regions, especially where water clarity improves without agricultural runoff. Rivers once dammed, diverted, or choked with waste, reclaim their courses. Dams silt up and eventually breach, allowing salmon and other migratory fish to return to ancestral spawning grounds. Wetlands expand, filtering water naturally and buffering floods. The Aral Sea, once nearly drained for cotton farming, begins refilling as irrigation channels collapse and rivers flow freely again. Forests regrow astonishingly fast. In the eastern United States, abandoned farmland returns to hardwood forests within 50 years. In Europe, wolves and lynx spread through rewilded corridors. Even the Amazon, if spared the final decades of deforestation, would regenerate much of its lost canopy. Though biodiversity loss from extinct species remains permanent, plastic pollution persists, but its impact lessens. Surface plastics break down under UV light, microplastics sink into sediment or are buried by natural processes. Without new input, the oceans slowly cleanse themselves over centuries, not decades. Perhaps most striking is the silence. No jet engines, no industrial hum, no chainsaws, only wind, water, animal calls, and the rustle of leaves. The biosphere, unburdened by extraction and disruption, stabilizes, not to a mythical, pristine state that never existed, but to a dynamic equilibrium, rich with life, adapted to a world finally free of human pressure. Earth doesn't celebrate our absence, it simply breathes easier. Imagine intelligent beings, perhaps evolved from another species or visitors from afar, arriving on Earth 1,000,000 years from now. What would they make of us? They would find no bustling cities, no satellites in orbit, no radio signals echoing into space. Our digital world, vast as it was, would have vanished entirely, its data lost to decayed hard drives and erased magnetic fields. No cloud, no archives, no internet. Only physical traces remain. Scattered across the planet, they might uncover odd concentrations of material, layers of concrete dust fused with glass and metal, embedded with strange isotopes like plutonium-239 or cesium-137, elements not found in nature. These would mark the Anthropocene horizon, a thin band in the rock record signaling a brief, intense pulse of geological change. In dry caves or deep vaults, they might find artifacts, stainless steel tools, ceramic insulators, fragments of writing on polymer sheets. But without context, meaning would be elusive. A smartphone would be a smooth, black stone with faint circuit patterns, useless, enigmatic. A book, if miraculously preserved, would crumble at a touch, its language indecipherable. They might wonder about the builders. Were they numerous? Yes, their impact was global. Were they clever? Undoubtedly. They reshaped continents, harnessed atoms, reached the moon. Were they wise? That would be harder to judge. The scale of their infrastructure suggests cooperation. The presence of art, music, and ritual objects implies inner lives. Yet the evidence of mass extinction, climate disruption, and radioactive waste might suggest a species that outpaced its own wisdom, a civilization brilliant but blind to its limits. Most telling would be what's missing. No grand monuments to peace, no planetary systems of care. Instead, vast networks built for extraction, speed, and consumption. They might conclude that humanity was a transitional force, an agent of rapid change, not stability. And yet they'd also find signs of tenderness. A child's shoe preserved in sediment, a garden wall built by hand, a painted cave reused as shelter long after cities fell. Perhaps they'd sense the paradox, a species capable of both profound destruction and quiet beauty. But ultimately, they'd see this. We were here. We altered everything. And then we were gone, leaving Earth to remember us only in stone, rust, and silence. What does it mean that everything we've built, our cities, our networks, our archives, could vanish within centuries, while mountains and rivers endure for eons? This thought experiment isn't about doom, it's about perspective. Stripped of our noise, our urgency, our endless doing, we see something startlingly simple. Human civilization is not a permanent feature of Earth. It is a flicker, a bright, complex, often beautiful flicker, but still brief against the deep time of geology. We like to imagine ourselves as masters of nature, as if the planet exists to serve us. But this scenario reveals the opposite. We exist within nature, dependent on its rhythms, vulnerable to its forces, and ultimately subject to its patience. Our power was always borrowed from fossil sunlight, from ancient forests turned to coal, from aquifers filled over millennia. And without constant tending, that borrowed order collapses. Yet there's humility in that truth, and perhaps liberation. If our legacy isn't measured in steel or concrete, then what endures? Not monuments, but moments. Not empires, but empathy. The love that shaped a home, the curiosity that launched a probe into space, the hands that planted a tree they'd never sit under. Our greatest creations may not be physical at all. Language, music, mathematics, ethics, these are patterns of thought, not stone. They live only as long as minds carry them. And when those minds are gone, so too are the ideas, unless they've already changed the world in ways that ripple outward. Perhaps the deepest lesson is this: meaning isn't guaranteed by permanence. A mayfly lives a day and still dances in the sun. A forest burns and regrows richer. We too can matter, not because we last forever, but because we were fully here while we were. In vanishing, humanity would leave behind a quieter earth, healing in our absence. But in living, we have the rare chance to choose a different ending. Not disappearance, but harmony. Not dominance, but belonging. For a species that can imagine its own end, the real question isn't what remains when we're gone, but what we choose to nurture while we're still here. And so, the earth continues. Not in triumph, not in sorrow, but in the quiet, steady way it always has, long before us and long after. Seasons turn, rivers carve new paths, forests breathe in what we once breathed out. The ice caps given time may regrow. The oceans, cleansed of our noise, fill again with the songs of whales. Species we drove to the edge may flourish. Others, lost forever, become fossils in tomorrow's rock. Our absence changes nothing fundamental about the planet's story. Earth has endured asteroid impacts, ice ages, mass extinctions. It does not need us to be whole. It simply is. Vast, patient, indifferent to glory or grief. And yet, in that indifference lies a kind of grace. For if the world can heal without us, then perhaps it can also thrive with us, if we choose differently. If we remember that we are not owners, but participants, not conquerors, but guests. This thought experiment, then, is not a prophecy. It's a mirror. It shows us how fragile our systems truly are, and how resilient the world beyond them. It reminds us that every light left on, every tree spared, every river protected, is an act of care in a universe that doesn't require it, but that we, as conscious beings, might choose anyway. So let the silence speak. Let the empty streets and overgrown suburbs teach us humility. Let the returning wolves and rising forests remind us that life prefers abundance over control. We are here only briefly, but while we are, we can listen to the wind, to the soil, to the quiet pulse of a planet that asks for nothing more than our respect. And when the last human story is told, may it be said that we love this world enough to leave it better than we found it.